This is your government. That means you own it. The owner's manual is the U.S. Constitution.
So what is the Constitution? Well, you can go to the National Archives and you can look at it along with the Declaration of Independence, but what is it? Well, first of all, it's a piece of paper. It has writing on it. This writing is so important that it tells police officers what they can and cannot do. And it tells the government what it can and cannot do. So it must have some kind of legal sense to it. Now, there's all kinds of legal documents. There's contracts, and there's declarations, and there's proclamations, and there's laws and regulations. And when you get to court, there's all kinds of affidavits and motions. And yikes, what does all this have to do with the Constitution? Well, the Constitution is a very special kind of legal document. It's called a charter. It comes from the Latin carta, which meant a piece of paper. Governments use charters to grant rights or property to individuals or groups. For instance, the school district, and therefore the school, have a charter. Many towns and companies also have charters. The charter says basically, we have the right to exist. Now, charters follow a usual format, and we can go back and use the Magna Carta, which is the Great Charter, from 800 years ago, and be able to see what a charter has to have in it in order to be a charter. At the beginning of this charter, King John says, "John, by the grace of God, King of England, Lord of Ireland," and then a whole bunch of other titles he had. Then he addresses the people that he's talking to, and finally he gets down to it and he says, "We have granted." He uses the royal we, and then he says what it is, the specific things that he is granting. So a charter has to have two things. It has to first say who it is that's granting these things, in other words, what the government is. And secondly, it has to say what it is that is being granted. Now we can talk about the Constitution of the United States. We, the people, are the government. You and I and our neighbors. We're the ones that are the government, but not just everyone. Of the United States. So it's only those that are in the United States. It's not those that are in England or France or any place else. So now we've named who the government is. So now we're going to talk about what we're going to grant. We are going to ordain, which means to enact a law. So therefore, whatever it is that we're going to do is going to have the force of law. And establish, it says, which means that we are going to put something together. So whatever it is that we're going to put together is going to have the force of law. It means that we can change it perhaps, or it can be changed, but it's going to be difficult to change it. So what are they going to ordain and establish? We are going to ordain and establish this Constitution. Now, at the time when the Constitution was written, the states had just thrown off the King of England, which was their chartered government before. And they were now making their own governments. And each state was coming up with its own constitution. That is to say that they were looking at and figuring out what was going to constitute the apparatus of their government, of them being able to govern themselves. So when we were going to write this Constitution, it was not going to be the Constitution for any particular state. It was going to be a Constitution for all of the United States together as a single unit. So now we have named who the governing body is, we the people, and we have named what we are going to grant, this Constitution for the United States of America. But before we got into that, we wanted to give the reasons for it, because this is what is called the preamble to the Constitution. Now, a preamble is what you say before you actually do something. For instance, I could simply raise my hand right now, or I could tell you I'm going to raise my hand, and then when I raise my hand, it's not a big surprise. So a preamble is a good idea. So what they wanted to do in this preamble is they wanted to say why we are going to grant this Constitution. The first thing that they wanted to do was, because they were all states, And they had gotten together and they had just fought a war for independence, but there was friction between them. It's just like when you have your friends and your friends are in a place, perhaps a party or something, there can be some friction, but you would like to have everybody get along with each other. You would like to have everybody have fun and be able to talk to each other and have a good union, not be all at each other's throats all the time. So what they wanted to do, they recognized they had a union of sorts in order to fight off this British crown, but they wanted to be able to have a more perfect union. And that was one of the reasons that they wanted to have this constitution. Not only did they want the states to have a more perfect union, but within the states they wanted to make sure that the people would be able to pursue their happiness. The first step to pursuing happiness is to establish justice, which means that when you do something good, you are rewarded for it. And when somebody else does something bad, then they get punished for it. Then the punishment needs to fit the crime, and the reward also needs to fit how good the action was that you did. After they've established justice, then they have to make sure that not only is it just for you, but also it's just for this person over here and that person over there. Because although I may have justice, if this person doesn't over here, he's liable to start a rebellion or something. And in order for me to have tranquility in my life, in order for me to have a calm life, I need everyone to have justice. So the next step after establishing justice is to have some kind of domestic, which means within the borders of the country, some domestic tranquility. After we have that, then we want to make sure that we don't get invaded from somebody else outside, which is going to disrupt our tranquility. And so we have common defense that we want to do. After we have all of that settled, we want to provide for some kind of prosperity for everybody, to make sure that everyone can be prosperous. But we're not going to provide it, we're going to promote the general welfare, and general welfare there just means the welfare of everyone, not specific welfare, this person or that person, but that everyone has an opportunity to prosper. So these 5 things that we want a more perfect union, we want to establish justice, we want domestic tranquility, we want to provide for the common defense, and also promote the general welfare. These blessings of liberty, these good things that come to us because we are at liberty to do things, we want to make sure are not just for ourselves, but also to carry on for our children and their children and their children, our posterity. So that is what this Constitution is for. It is so that we, the people, can govern ourselves, and it creates an apparatus for us to be able to do that. There's much more to know about it, of course, but it's easy to start. The Constitution fits on just a few sheets of paper. And while you're studying it, make sure you get the words defined that you're not sure of, as we covered in the previous video of this series, and as we did in this video. So now, let's read the beginning of the U.S. Constitution, and you can read along with me. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. They were about to set up a new form of government. But what form of government would it be? Would it be a democracy or a republic or what? Watch the next series in this video to find out what the different forms of government are and which one they chose.